ask some very serious questions, really trying to understand some of the understanding that we have, and possibly even some of the profound impacts of colonialism as well as apartheid in South Africa. You may realize this, but on Monday was a very important day in South African history as they were celebrating Freedom Day, which comes every 29th of April since 1994. It is February 11, 1990.
Have made it possible for me to be here today. I therefore place the remaining years of my life in your hands. Warmest gratitude to the millions of my compatriots and those in every corner of the globe who have campaigned tirelessly for my release. I extend special greetings to the people of Cape Town.
So we were just playing you there an excerpt of the 11th of February, 1990. Nelson Mandela, as you can hear, he had just been released, and he was making a statement as he's standing at the stairs of Cape Town City Hall.
Your mass matches.
He had just been officially released from prison. And then we're just going back, taking a walk into history as we are, celebrating as well in solidarity with South Africa as they are celebrating Freedom Day, which was on the 27th of April, 1994. And today we are hoping to explore how some of these oppressive systems that we as Africans have experienced have actually gone and shaped the social, our economic, as well as the political landscape of all our countries. In today's conversation, we're looking particularly at South Africa. We also want to try and understand how did the legacy of colonialism as well as apartheid contribute to the ongoing social as well as economic situations and consequences South Africa is facing today. So I hope you can take a seat back and enjoy. As always, we have our outstanding thought leader all the way from South Africa to help us understand what exactly we're going to be talking about today and in the context of how South Africa is appreciating their Freedom Day. So we just took a walk down memory lane, and also we're going to continue to take a walk down memory lane as we try to recall some of the dark days of apartheid, where the ugly monster of apartheid raised his head around about 1948, and others will say this is courtesy of Cecil John Rhodes and how he had this plan to build South Africa's wealth, but he did this on the backs of cheap black slave labor. And as you may know, just like our ancestors, South African ancestors, were not having it. In fact, they fought tooth and nail against the system. And in 1994, with the dawn of a new era, if you remember, the then apartheid era president, F.W. de Klerk, came in and said, okay, we're lifting the ban on ANC and any other anti-apartheid parties, and nearly 20 million South Africans of all races in a historic election that was held over 4 days between the 26th, I think, to the 29th of April, went to vote. Fast forward to today, others will say South Africa is still dealing with leftovers of the apartheid toxic legacy. Others will say millions of black South Africans are still stuck, maybe even in neglected townships, and what others will call informal settlers. South Africans themselves are said to be demanding that this is a time for us to change. And I just played you there something from the president Nelson Mandela, as he was released from prison before he became president. I'm going to play you another excerpt from his presidential speech as we are tracing our steps towards where South Africa is today, 30 years later, and possibly how they as a country may be feeling. Take a listen to Nelson Mandela as he becomes president and what he had to say at that time. It's Capital 100.4 FM, Harare Zabit, and this is courtesy of Al Jazeera. So also, as an active Zimbabwean, we are also coming from celebrating our own Freedom Day, as it were.
Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will again experience the oppression of one by another and suffer the indignity of being the skunk of the world. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. I thank you.
And some still say South Africa, as I've said, is still rated one of the most unequal countries in the world. Is that really true, though? But interestingly and excitingly so, on May 29th, South Africa will hold its 7th national vote since the end of apartheid. And while we are also remembering the brevity and the resilience of their ancestors and our ancestors, demanding a better future for ourselves as well as our children, some voices in today's context, especially in terms of opinion polls, are coming in and saying we're going to see perhaps a shift even in how, the lead party may find itself losing a parliamentary majority as South Africa may be embarking in a new dawn. We want to understand exactly the historical roots of apartheid in South Africa, but also where its legacy is going. And for us to be able to do that, I'm quite excited, as always, to have, as I've said, our South African thought leader all the way from South Africa, Menzi Maseko, to help us appreciate how South Africa is feeling and what the future hold. Good morning, I was about to say good morning, South Africa. Good morning, Menzi Maseko. Thank you so much for joining us. And hopefully you had an exciting Freedom Day.
Yes, we did have a great day. But of course, these days always are bittersweet. We celebrate, we commemorate. We prefer the word commemorate because we remember what has been done, the achievement, because it is an achievement to gain one's independence. But also it comes with the responsibility of actually doing something about it. So we give thanks to our ancestors, we give thanks to the Almighty for the opportunity to be free.
Got you. Interesting questions always come in when we're looking at apartheid. It is said it's an extension of colonialism, right? Where it in itself was the keeping of possibly legal racial divisions that were in place, where we as indigenous people remained a majority of the population, and yet still we were the majority, but we were still legally separated and an inferior race. If you could just kindly give us, Menzi, what history saw apartheid becoming so entrenched in South Africa?
Well, colonialism in its entirety, there's many terms. In these terms, it's important to understand them according to how they are partitioned. But at the same time, it's important to understand that it is a global system that is anti-people, anti-nature. I'm not sure if people say anti, some say anti, but it is a counterproductive system that basically oppresses people due to color. That's just apartheid, right? It's separate development. But colonialism is another system that is about taking over what belongs to other nations and making it yours and creating your own world on top of the world, that on top of a land that has been given to others by their ancestors, right? So there is an interesting African proverb from West Africa that says, this land is our land. It was won for us by our ancestors, won. So that means there was a battle there, a conflict there, even before the times of colonialism. So if we trace colonialism, we have to understand that it goes together as a package. There's colonialism, there's imperialism, there's white supremacy, monopolizing the truth, monopolizing of history, and monopolizing of meaning, right? When I say the monopoly of meaning, it means that both colonialism and imperialism and apartheid they give a false reality to people that they are oppressing, but it also projects a false reality to those people who are onlookers, looking from the outside in and say, there's apartheid happening in South Africa. But even right now, there's apartheid happening in Israel, in so-called Israel. I'm not digressing. I'm just saying that apartheid happens in many different parts of the world.
Right.
But then from the outside looking in, those who are doing the oppressing paint a different picture. They say they are the ones that are oppressed. Like, for example, in South Africa, the Boers, the Afrikaners and all the imperialistic countries that were oppressing us, they painted a picture that the so-called Bantu people, what they call Bantu, they came here and we basically eliminated the San, the
right.
Khoi, what we call Abatwa, or what derogatory called the Bushmen, right? The Bushmen, even till today, the San people and the Khoi, a lot of them still call themselves Bushmen. You understand? So that's the legacy that apartheid and colonialism imprints upon the mind of the people, not just in the mind, but in the system and in the culture of the people. You have people who are saying, I'm a proud Bushman, but they don't realize that this being proud Bushman is an identity that has been given to them by their oppressors. And even until today, the so-called Bushmen, the San people, the Batwa people, They have different tribes. They are a nation with different tribes. Some of them are still calling for special treatment within the South African state, right? They say, no, we are special because we are the first people. We need to be treated different from the Bantu. We need to be treated different from the Indians that are living in South Africa. We need special treatment because we are special somehow. But that specialness, that division between Abantu and Abatwa was imposed by the apartheid and colonial system.
Right.
So that's the legacy. So it has a long-lasting stench, this thing of colonialism, and it's something that we need to keep fumigating at every opportunity we get.
Right. So in understanding what you've just highlighted there, the narrative that has been perpetuated against us or against you as South Africa. I say us because, the border is not something we created, right? So if I can say against us. So how do you find that this policy, this thinking, this story, and even the laws we then see being enforced through racial segregation, how do you think they are enforcing this discrimination, or enforce rather this discrimination in us as black people?
It's interesting you should say that. As African people, we are one people, but the laws that govern us, we are still, even the minstrels that pretend to run our respective provinces, our respective countries, are called the minstrels for a reason, because they are puppet masters. There's a master and then there are puppets, right? They are running it according to Roman Dutch law. But the intellectuals, the African intellectuals, have been pointing out that this Roman Dutch law does not serve indigenous African people.
Right.
So it does not serve us here. It doesn't serve the Australians. It doesn't serve the people in Papua New Guinea. It doesn't serve the people in Haiti.
Right.
This is why you see turmoil in all these countries. Because I'm speaking about extensions of blackness, extensions of African people everywhere globally. Right. So, but all of us globally are basically so-called governed or ruled or exist under a system of white supremacy, which has a seat of power, and that seat of power is the Vatican City, and the other seats of power are the United States of America and the United Kingdom, right? So these seats of power are foreign powers existing in Africa, being run by educated Africans who go to Cambridge, go to York, go to all these universities. Once we go and learn there, we learn how to be good white people.
Right.
And the more we exist as fake versions of ourselves, there is nothing that can change. We can talk democracy, we can talk human rights, we can talk all kinds of nice-sounding phrases. But at the end of the day, if we do not have a governing system that is indigenous, that is soil-born, that actually comes from us, we will continue seeking jobs while we have land. We will continue seeking education while we have real, true learning. But we are unaware of all these things because we are living a life that is diametrically opposed to nature, how nature formed us and put us in this earth. We did have a civilization which existed autonomously from these powers, but now that we have post those civilizations have been destroyed, right? The core, their values have not been destroyed, but the civilizations themselves, the law, the legal system that makes sure that we live ma'at or we live as Africans, those have been destroyed. It's a matter of just restoring them so that we can restore ourselves.
So this is very important that you've said this, because then how does understanding that history that you're articulating, the history of colonialism and apartheid, inform, Menzi, the strategies we should be coming up, not only in terms of reconciliation, in some cases others may say reparation, but also even social justice, right, for today?
Yeah, reparation is a very important point here that you are raising, because there are moves for reparations happening globally, even in South Africa, but it's very minimal. In fact, there was a Ghanaian professor who was talking to me about finding people in South Africa who are interested in reparations, because they've got a methodology that they've used and that works. That has got British people, got Portuguese Portuguese government, government, and French government, Belgian government to pay up at certain levels, pay up certain communities, both with money and with resources. Others, because not only money was stolen, not only land was stolen, but the resources underneath the land was stolen. So when it comes to reparations, you need to tread carefully regarding what it is that you want back. If you want land back, you can get the land back, but they may give you land that is unproductive, right? Because they still hold our land.
Right.
So reparations is something that is very powerful, and I think Zimbabwe is ahead somehow when it comes to that. Of course, a lot of work still needs to be done, but we, as people who gained our independence in '94, we are actually very much proud of the Zimbabwean so-called, what would you call it, the restoration of the land.
Right.
We know that there's a lot that still needs to be done, but we are very proud of you doing that because you are us and we are you.
Got you.
The restoration of Zimbabwe is the restoration of South Africa.
Got you.
We are intertwined whether we like it or not.
Got you. And in fact, some critics come in and say, about 30% of land redistribution that was said to have been done within 5 years of election, according to, manifestos and ideation that was coming in towards 1994 by ANC, for example. And yet, fast forward into 2024, others will say, well, but still more than 80% of our land is still, in South African land, is still in minority hands. When you look at that sort of thinking, Menzi, productive land, right? And I think only about 10% is in the hands of local or indigenous South Africans, and it's in unproductive land, like you're saying. It's infertile or whatever until we found out that they have minerals or something underneath. I think if I'm correct. So when we're looking at statistics like that information to say 30 years later, 80% of our land is still in minority hands. How is this history we've just discussed now informing this position we're in as South Africa?
You ask such interesting questions. And they are so broad and deep. But it just makes me, the land issue is the crucial issue. The land issue is the central issue, But let me give you a statistic that I saw at the South African History Online.
Right.
If you look at, let's just start at '94. In '94, around 23 million people were eligible voters. Almost 20 million out of that 22 or 22.7 million, right? But let's just say 23 million. Out of the 23 million people that were eligible to vote, 20 million voted, right?
Right.
So out of those 20 million that voted, I would say the National Party, the party that's the apartheid party, still received 20%, and Inkatha received 10%, and the DP, which is now the DA, received 1.7%. But the party that was established for the restoration of land, not the restoration of democracy. Right. There was no democracy to restore because there was no democracy before. The Pan-Africanist Congress received 1.2%. This year, as we go to the 29th of May election, the PAC is not on the ballot. You understand? In '94, they had 1% vote. They kept on dwindling and dwindling and dwindling. They've had a lot of infighting within them. That's a different story, right? But the fact that they are not on the ballot today, 30 years later, the party that is pushing for the land restoration, it says something about the democratic institution. It says something also about the system of voting for these things. Voting is not bad, but if other factors, the participatory democracy is not actually in place, and if land is not restored, you can vote all your life. The ANC has had so much majority, the two-thirds majority for all this time, but they've failed to restore the land to the people that need it. But there's a tougher question. A whole lot of people that did receive land sold it back to white people.
They sold it back to white people.
Or foreigners. So black people have given back the land because, you see, land is tricky. You can have all the land you want, but we're existing in a capitalistic economy where the government does not support you sufficiently. You may get 10 tractors But those 10 tractors need maintenance. Those 10 tractors need diesel.
Right.
That land needs compost, fertilizer, right? It does not need GMOs or anything, none of those kinds of things. But it just needs, farming is very, I don't know, it needs money, you know. You need money to do it. You know, you need labor, you need to pay the people, right? There are weather issues, you know, you need to weather the storm. If there's a drought, you need to, have mechanisms in place to withstand the drought so that you can farm again the next year, or the next year if the drought is 2 years or whatever.
Got you.
So those are the things. So the ANC in South Africa is in power, but right now they're being threatened by various other factors. But almost all these parties, almost all these parties that are within democratic South Africa, they are funded by organizations like the Oppenheimers, white monopoly, white racist organizations. They are funded by the mining group, Anglo-American. They are funded by the Motsepe, who get their money from the Bill Gates of this world.
Yeah.
You understand? So it's a whole mess, but it all points to the fact that Africans are not ruling ourselves according to our own means.
Right.
And we can do it.
And so this is a very interesting question. It's 9:45 on Capital. Good morning. We're talking this morning to Menzi Kagudumaseko in South Africa as we are unpacking the past and embracing the future, looking at apartheid's lasting impact in South Africa, and where 30 years later South Africa is and where they're going. And we're asking ourselves some critical questions, not just in terms of South Africa, but I think even for us as Zimbabwe, as Africa at large, as we're trying to amplify the voices and possibly even the stories, Menzi, of indigenous people like yourselves who understand exactly where the history is and where we need to be focusing, sort of strategies we need to be coming up with as Africa, again speaking to reconciliation, reparation, and even social justice when we are talking about our independence, when we are talking about our freedom as Ubuntu from those who had come in to enslave us, using us as cheap labor. And we're asking ourselves some very critical questions this morning as Africa towards the future we want. Menzi, you were also talking about, looking even at the laws that we're using, governing ourselves. And just now you're also highlighting a lot of important things about the land conversation, that when we say we are free as Africa or as African countries, that we are independent, are we truly independent from a context we understand ourselves as Africans? I wanted you to help us understand what you think now the role of traditional leadership should be in a new South African democracy. Looking into South Africa from our point of view across the border, it feels as if your traditional laws and systems are probably still a whole lot more intact than, say, ours might be. What do you think the role of traditional leadership should be in this new South African democracy, speaking to what you were just explaining about land, about the ideals that we are considering as laws and as our constitution, for example, towards where we should be going as South Africa and as Africa at large?
The role of traditional leadership is quite simply to be the alternative to what is called the democratic system. But now, democracy also needs to be unpacked in a proper way. South Africa, let me put it this way. South Africa has a very robust what you call, I use this term all the time. It's a civil society, right? And this civil society movement ensures that everyone's rights basically are respected, constitutionally. So the traditional leadership is even the budget. There's budget for the traditional leadership within the South African fiscus, right? But at the same time, there are different organizations. But now these organizations have also been dividing themselves. When I say they've been dividing themselves, there's something called COCTA. I forgot what it stands for, but COCTA is kind of like a body within the government which looks. It's called the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, right?
Right.
Department of Cooperative Governance. So which basically means that government must cooperate with traditional leaders on the ground, because traditional leaders are the stewards for the land. They are the custodians, right? They are the custodians of the land. They the people under them. So you have a chief, you have a king. Let me give you an example. Of course, in KwaZulu you have a king, King Zulu, that is contested. So there's a king, and there are paramount chiefs beneath him, and then there are indunas. Induna would be like a leader of a governor of a region, a small region. Let's just say a village.
Okay.
Right. The region would be the paramount chief. So it's kind of like hierarchical, but at the end of the day, it is still kind of operating within the same Roman Dutch laws, because kings are tried. If a king commits a crime or a chief commits a crime, he's charged under the Constitution of South Africa because he falls within the ambit of the South African Constitution. And the South African Constitution is a democratic constitution, but it is not something that it's just democratic by name, because it doesn't mean that it's agreed. All the laws there, the principles and the values there are agreed upon by everyone. They are imposed on everyone via a Roman Dutch system. You know, I hope you're understanding what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That imposition. But at the same time, there are laws. Every single nation within South Africa has its own laws, its own ways to deal with issues of justice. If you steal, this is what happens.
Yeah.
If you kill, this is what happens. If you take somebody's land, this is what happens. This is what governs traditions, customs, and all that.
Yeah.
All those things are there.
Yeah.
But what takes precedence above them? It's like a marriage. You know, traditional marriage is there, it's respected. The community respects it, but the country and the onlookers, they respect the paper, what you call the paper writing.
Yeah.
You know, so the wife is the paper wife, called paper wife, the one who married constitutionally.
Yes.
You know, in the court.
Yeah.
What court? We already spoke about that.
So
that's the one who actually has the right of land ownership. She has the right of everything. She can impose her will on the traditional wife.
Yeah.
Because tradition is minimized.
It's kind of sad, Menzi.
Yeah. So that traditional leadership is in.
Got you.
Is troubled. Let me put it that way.
It's kind of sad, Menzi, that I think perhaps even us as Ubuntu, as Africans, we may not have fully grasped the effect of this capitalism system that people like Cecil John Rhodes brought into us, and in trying to push the development of their colonial countries, right? Our mother colonizers, rather, where, you know, they were coming in, mining, extracting our minerals, using our resources to develop themselves, and sometimes give us what they would say leftovers. And part of the effects of that process, as I read in a publication by someone whose name I can't remember at the moment, who was articulating that even when we look at gender disparity right now in an African context, it came in from processes like that, through colonialism, through capitalism, because when suddenly our men were forced to work at the railroads and in mines because they were stronger, they started to create this male gender being better than us as women, which was never who we were as Africans. And this is just one example of how, you know, there are remnants of colonialism, of apartheid, that have become inherent in our system and the way we do things. So I'm wondering, one, can we truly then redress those things if we don't have a true picture and maybe understanding of that history? But also, what do you think now, looking at how our forefathers, our Kwame Nkrumah, our Nelson Mandela, our Robert Mugabe, they had their resistance strategies that helped at that time to bring us April 18, to bring us April 27. So today, what sort of African is needed? What sort of resistance strategies should we be using, Menzi, so that we are pushing towards a majority rule, which will include us being able, one, to fully take back our land, enjoy it as our own with no conditions if it were possible, but also to a point where we are moving in a path towards Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, using our stories, our narratives, our rules.
Somehow, your question touches on what we've just spoken about, the issue of leadership, traditional leadership. I have an article in my blog, greenankworth.wordpress.com. It's a several articles, a series of articles under the title Ubu Code, Ubukosi is a word basically that means kingship, right? So one of the articles is titled Ubukosi Monarchy Revisited. I'm saying revisited because it's a question that comes up every year regarding the power of the individual, the rights of the individual, the rights of kings. So what I'm basically asking is just to summarize, is to how do we restore tradition at the same time being futuristic about? Find ways to actually reimagine what it means to be an African within a context of a world that basically is designed to thwart our efforts, or designed to suppress us. So you can't just bow to a king just because he says he's a king, or a queen, but just because it's in the blood. But you have to look at issues of service. How are you as a leader in a community of service to the community? Right? How are you leading by example? You know, so those are the same question that can be asked of traditional leaders is the same question that should be asked of political leaders, or business leaders, or leaders in the spiritual realm, in religion, in the religious setting. So it cannot be different standards for different people. The standard has to be similar.
Right.
It has to be under the holistic of Ma'at. So for me, to restore anything in Africa, you need the spirit of Ubuntu, Chivano. I'm not sure if I'm saying it the right way.
You said it perfectly well, yes.
When I speak about that, I'm speaking about Chivano as something that is codified. And now that we have writing, and we know that our things are passed on orally and we do things practically, but now that we have writing, we have computers, we have all kinds of images. A child in a primary school should be able to know by grade 3 what Chivano is. But even in South Africa, Ubuntu should not be something that you only learn about at university, but in a philosophy class. If you're doing engineering, you don't know anything about it. If you're a medical doctor, you don't know anything about it. These things should be within a curriculum that is deliberate, both at home, in the school, and in other institutions too. Without that kind of deliberate Africanization, we can talk decolonization all we like, we can talk about roads all we like, but we still have a grave. I'm sorry, I come back to the question on the side.
Yes.
We still have a grave of that imposter in the sacred ground in the Matopos. So we cannot move forward when we still have those simple things being allowed to happen. But the only thing allowed to happen, because the people that govern us are only black in skin. They're not African in terms of principles and values.
Wow.
They're more comfortable in a suit than they are in an African attire. If I'm coming wearing something from Ghana, they'll be like, you're trying to be West African. If I come wearing something from the Coastal, they say, but you are out, you have lost your identity. But if I'm wearing a suit, I haven't lost my identity.
Right.
I'm a good black. You know, I'm educated. I'm civil.
Yeah.
Right. So those are the things. It's from the dress code, the mentality, to the education, to every single thing that we do on a daily basis, to the food we eat. You know. I was a Zimbabwean chef the other day who was recommending some pork in one of the groups that I have. It's a health group that I have called Ikambi Natural Healing. You know, and he was like, there's a nice pork dish, traditional Zimbabwean pork dish. There is I understand that Zimbabweans eat pork now, but is it traditional? When did it come? Did you always have steak that you were eating? No, I don't think so.
No.
Similar with us. You know, we ate all kinds of things. We ate all kinds of meat, you know, but meat was a sometime thing. We had a variety of things that we were eating, but now we don't eat them no more.
Yes.
You know, so health, physical health, mental health, and institutional health. We need to get those things back in order.
It's so funny. It's so funny that you're highlighting this because the next segment we're going into, we call that Radio Kitchen, where we actually have been asking that question. Why is it that we don't see our more traditional foods more commercialized? So in Zimbabwe, we eat the blackjack, for example, and pretty much every Zimbabwean knows it's an unusual leaf. We eat it, but you will never see the blackjack. That's it. You will never see it. That's it. We call it Dzinde, actually. Oh, very close there. Yeah. And it's fascinating because we never see that commercialized, but we all eat it. Well, when I say we all eat it, we know it's a part of our indigenous diet. And yet we are more...
Zimbabweans,
yes,
you Zimbabweans are a bit ahead. I must tell you, you are a bit ahead.
Are we now?
When I was living in Zimbabwe,
Mm-hmm.
store, I don't want to mention names,
Mm-hmm.
I would see more things. I mean, I could get what's the thing made from no, not marula, made from baobab, the baobab powder. I
Mauyu?
could get baobab powder.
Yes.
I could get certain leaves. I could get what's this nice thing that is good for flu? The leaf, what's it called?
There's moringa,
The
there's
green one,
zumbani.
Zumbani. I could get all those things. I could get to a shop and get all those things. In
Right.
South Africa, it's not so. You have to go to a health shop and pay a lot of money. But
Yeah.
in Zimbabwe, you get these things. You see, yes, you can do better, but you are doing better than us.
Got you.
You can still get amabele, which is what we call sorghum. You know, to go and cook at home.
Yeah.
Here, you have to struggle to get amabele.
Got
You
you.
understand? Because everything is maize.
Got you.
But maize is not ours.
It's not
It's
ours.
Portuguese.
Yes. Yes. Menzi, only
So
because of time.
decolonization and Africanization comes from your food. Look at your plate and see how much you can do.
Got you. Because of
It's
time,
a-
Menzi, we're going to have to hold our conversation here. But again, thank you so much as we commemorate the 27th of April with you, as South Africa is also moving to a new dawn. Africa is moving with you towards the Africa we want. Have a fantastic day, Menzi. We appreciate you.
Have a wonderful day.